welcome to Encounter Live. Excited for you to join us today. And this is a part where we're talking about real people, real stories, and really real issues. Because these are things that we can't ignore. We can't use our faith and our even pursuit of Jesus to try to ignore or kind of pretend certain things aren't there. We can't explain things away like that. But Jesus engages with us in these aspects of our life. And so if you're going through a difficult time, know that there's a good part of that. We get to process things together. And so I invited one of my friends, Emily Sanders, who's a marriage family therapist, to just kind of share what she's processing through this kind of COVID quarantine time, but also to give us some insight and how we can, in a healthy way, process through the different things that we are going through during this craziness. So thank you, Emily, for coming.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. I'm happy to be here with you guys.
I'm so excited. I was telling you earlier about everyone else. You are a big ask. You are one of the people that we just, man, if we could get her to come on here and share, I think people are really going to benefit from your wisdom. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll take that to my heart. Thank you for the compliment.
So you and your husband, Mike, you have 3 kids. You in the Orange County area, and you've been, how long have you been in marriage family therapy?
I have been practicing in private practice since 2012.
Awesome.
And also done some work in rehab settings and some collegiate settings too, but primarily settling in private practice. Yeah.
Very cool. And what made you want to go into counseling?
Honestly, it was kind of an accident. I went to seminary out of high school. And I just thought, I don't know what I want to do with my life, but maybe this will give me some more tools to help people better. Yeah. And I remember it was my senior year of my undergrad, and I thought, I think I want to become a counselor. I was in class, it just struck me, I'm going to go to graduate school. It was such a rando thought, and I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. Yeah. In all fairness, I even went to my interview for my graduate program, and some time later, one of my professors said, I remember being worried that you were too naive for this work and that you couldn't handle the messiness of therapy. And honestly, I think that she had assessed me well at that time in my life. But I'm just so thankful because I love what I do, and it is messy and it is painful, but it's so beautiful and really rewarding.
Yeah. Now you just said something right now that doesn't usually line up. You said messy, painful, and beautiful.
Yes, sir.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, even from my own life, just realizing that painful things grow us. You know, I wish that things that were easy and explainable and understandable and gave us the warm fuzzies caused us to grow. But there is something about stress and strain and pain that when we experience stress, we are forced to adapt to it. And that's part of the reason I'm thankful for this conversation, because that really needs to be respected. That pain and stress can change us. And if we are not emotionally healthy, then when we experience that stressor and that strain, then we crack. That's not scientific, but you know, we break under that strain. But a healthy person can take in the stressor and they don't feel good and it still hurts and it's painful, but they can adapt and come out stronger on the other side of that stress.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I'm thankful for this conversation, because in church world, in Christendom, there's a lot who are anti-counseling or who are unwilling to admit the importance of mental health. So what is interesting is if I break my leg, I can say it hurts here, and then you go to the doctor, they give you pain medication, and you rest and you get a splint, and everyone goes, okay, yeah, you need to rest your leg. But if you go through tragedy, where does it hurt? It hurts everywhere. And you take medicine and it suddenly, there's something wrong with you. Oh, you have to rest. Oh, you're lazy. What do you think we can do? I know this is a big question, but just in operating with our faith and with counseling, like I'm 100% for it, but what would you kind of help someone process through, like, should I pursue counseling? Should I pursue the possibility of medication? Or I'm hurting, what do I do?
Yeah, Yes, that is a big question.
It is a big
Erick.
question I didn't give you. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. No, because it's an important one. First, as Christians, we are in this framework, in the state of mind that God is in control and that our faith is a beautiful thing. And we have God that's here, and he's so often portrayed as a rescuer. And he is a rescuer. And sometimes he does do miracles, and sometimes he doesn't. But he does promise to be a comforter, and he does promise to be there and to help support us, right? But sometimes in spiritual circles, we are supposed to stay in the church and continue to believe and have faith that something is going to change. And there are certain points when we can keep praying and rely on the Lord and enjoy his comfort, and also realize, I think that I need some other things to help me further this along, right? That the Lord has given us wisdom and knowledge to be able to have other tools to help us. And so some things, if we're interpreting them only through a spiritual lens, we're going to cause a lot of shame, right? If the first thing that comes to my mind is even addiction. Yes, there are some of us that we struggle with substance abuse because we're just trying to survive something painful, and it helps us numb out. It's so effective. However, some people have even the added bonus that they have a chemical predisposition to addiction. So here you might have an addict that is saying, I don't want to do this anymore, and I will it, I want it, God's going to help me, but they need extra support, and even to respect the fact that they are predisposed to this condition. There are many other conditions that are probably a better example of that, but being able to know when we need a little bit of extra support. There are certain mental health issues that do require psychotropic medication to treat them effectively, to rebalance their brains and their chemicals, and to calm their thinking. So sometimes that can be tricky, and pastors get to respect staying in their lane, that they can minister spiritually and recognize when they've bumped up against the end of what they're able to offer, and to be able to point, their churchgoers to mental health experts, psychiatrists. There's all different types of resources that can help support someone's emotional and mental health.
That's good. And I love how you said that, especially as a pastor, telling me to stay in my lane. And
Sorry.
No, don't apologize, because we literally need that.
We need each other.
Exactly. It's a team environment. Like, I can't tell you, hey, this is what the Bible says about how many reps you should do at the gym, because that's out of my lane. Something I've been kind of pushing with the well is you need a pastor, you need a doctor, you need a counselor. Like, you're spiritual, emotional, spiritual. Emotional, spiritual, physical. There we go. But the importance of you need people who can speak into your life in several different ways. And science and faith should be in complement with each other, not in competition with each other. So just because you need help doesn't mean you're less faithful.
Yes. And I like the example that you used about the hurting leg, because I have had some of my clients, they just wrestle with such severe mental health issues, and not to diminish anyone's physical suffering, but they said, this is so torturous, but nobody can see it and nobody understands it. I get called crazy. Am I crazy? I don't know. Sometimes I think it'd be easier if I had cancer or if I had a limb amputated, because at least people could see my suffering. Again, not to diminish any struggle. This is not the hardship Olympics, but that there's no physical evidence of the suffering.
And I think we think as faith-based people we would get, just because it's not seen, that we believe it's there. We think we would get that, but we don't. Talking a little bit more specifically to this season.
Yes, it's a fun one.
It's a fun one.
Yes.
Because you went through your training in pandemic class, right? You know exactly what to do.
Yes, we go to school. It's like pandemic world.
Pandemic world.
Yeah.
101. But do you believe there's been an increase in interest in mental health recently?
Well, we're certainly talking about it more. In general, we're forced to, because of the pandemic, and actually September is Suicide Awareness Month now, which is a big talking point, because isolation does something funky to us. And so I know I can only speak to my practice, but I obviously have other clinicians that I consult with and talk with. And we've all seen a big rise in suicidal ideation, anxiety skyrocketing. You know, we're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be alone. And so it's very painful. And then obviously we have icing on the cake with financial stressors and then marital stressors that are coming out because of the strain and fear of illness, and then all the racial tension that's going on and political tension. It is just the perfect storm. It's the perfect storm for chaos.
It's the cupcake from hell.
Yes.
Yeah,
I want to return mine. I want my money back.
Can we just restart it? So what areas have you seen, you know, you mentioned suicide ideation. What other areas of mental health are you seeing kind of beginning to creep up because of this experience we're all going through?
Well, obviously anxiety. Very much so. Very much the anxiety is creeping in. People wondering, we don't do well with the unknown. So for individuals who already struggle with an anxiety disorder, obviously that's going to be amplified because of the stressors. And then people that in general, we all experience anxiety to some level or another, right? But these conditions definitely push anybody who's somewhat managed theirs pretty well and can tip them over the edge. We don't have resources that we usually can, right? Fearing going outside or being with other people or gatherings, things that help keep us stable have been pulled away from us. So that's frightening, for sure.
And it's interesting seeing how we as a society responded, especially in the first March, you know, the year of March, of the toilet paper obsession. You know, do you see that there's some societal things that we are kind of joining in together in our response versus individual?
Absolutely. I mean, even to speak to the toilet paper, there's research that already indicates that when people fear that they're going to be entering into a hardship, one of the things that they do want is toilet paper. That is a personal comfort that people want to make sure that they have for themselves. Yes.
That's one thing all the writers of any apocalyptic movie got wrong. Was our obsession.
They said they wanted canned beans, but no, it's toilet paper.
Toilet paper.
Yes.
We all learned something about humanity this year.
It's interesting because, and too, in response to COVID, there's this collective outcry of, be productive, use this time, work harder. This is awesome. And then there's other people on the complete other side of the spectrum that are saying it's okay to rest. It's okay to be unproductive. Hey, this is really hard. Maybe you don't need to be productive. Maybe it's okay to rest more. And so really, I think that people's responses tend to fall into one of those two camps. And everybody is trying to figure out, how do I cope with this temporary normal? I'm not calling it a new normal, because this is not forever, and people do need to be encouraged that this is temporary. And it's painful. That's not to negate or to diminish how hard this is, but it is not forever.
And that's good to know. It's good to know that this isn't permanent, that there is hope at the end of it. And you kind of mentioned some want the overproduction. Some are like, no, we're good, let's relax. And it really shows our personalities coming out. And I was really thankful if one of my leaders over me said, it's okay to operate at 60% right now. Because my inclination is, okay, now I've got to go 200%. Because if I don't do something, I don't have control. So that was really encouraging. And I think that going back to teamwork, let's communicate with each other instead of you're lazy or you're all these different things to really help each other out.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned control, because that is something when we feel out of control, we want to regain control, and we'll reach for anything that we have, whether that is becoming more controlling in our homes or tightening our grips at work, or, making sure every penny is accounted for, or making sure that our friends' political views align with us. We'll grasp for whatever kind of control that we have, right? If I wear a mask, I'll be safer and wear a mask. But, right, we're trying to do anything that we can to give us some sort of sense of control. And some of it's helpful and some of it is not. And it perpetuates anxiety.
Yeah. Wow. That's good. So one of the things that really caught my attention with you recently is your Instagram account. And I know our president, Glenn Burris, pointed it out, and I can tell you how many people I've shared it with, oh yeah, I'm already following. And it's not you're just sharing things that are helpful during this time. And that's one of the things that I really appreciate about it, because it's an encouragement. It's not a dividing maker.
Sure.
And so we'll put that in the comments, her Instagram account, so you can make sure to follow her, because there's just some really great stuff. But what are you seeing in this specific season are healthy habits or mindsets that those watching right now could maybe begin to get introduced to that might be helpful for them?
And I mean, there's a ton of things, of course, and what everybody needs is unique to them. There's never a one size fits all when it comes to health, but there are things that in general, everybody should be doing. The first thing that comes to my mind, honestly, is getting enough sleep. And I'm not a doctor. But if we are not getting enough rest, we cannot regulate our feelings very well. And something that I have noticed with a lot of my clients is that they are not sleeping well. One, you have parents who now have no breaks from their children, and so they're wanting to stay up late because that's their only alone time. Or teens that are on their phones texting until 4 a.m, or people mindlessly watching television just because they want a break. But people are not sleeping well, or their anxiety's not letting them.
But it's a vicious cycle.
Oh, it's a bad cycle. And so if people could really focus on structuring their sleep, it's a big deal. Also, alcohol is a depressant. It's not a great idea to be drinking right now if you're already struggling with some anxiety or depression. And for some people, to consume alcohol really skyrockets their anxiety badly. So if people are drinking, it's not a judgment on drinking, but it's probably not a healthy thing to be doing right now either. Also is to be making sure that you have someone, at least someone in your life that you're talking to, and being honest about what's hard right now, because you can either talk out your junk or you can act out your junk.
Wow.
And so if you are not speaking and expressing and feeling, I'm telling you, your behavior is going to show it. And a lot of times you don't even know, or maybe you do, but people really need to be talking. And so, yes, having a therapist, if everyone in the world could see a therapist, which they should, but that's not a reality for everybody. That's understandable. Have your friends, have your pastors, your small groups, neighbors, engage online. Facebook has tons of groups where you can message one another and find support. So just make sure in some way you're talking and verbalizing.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's huge, because we're in this state where if COVID happened 20 years ago, when I was in high school, texting had just became a thing. But if you became isolated then, there wasn't a lot of way to stay connected with people. But now we have incredible tools that we can either use for evil or use for good.
Yes.
So it's kind of talking, this is a little bit off the script here, but social media, healthy, unhealthy, how can we make it a healthy interaction?
Well, if you've ever worked with me, I really am slow to call anything good or bad, because honestly, there's not really much in life that is only one, right? Even having a new baby is beautiful and it's exciting and you've wanted him or her, and then it's hard and it's wretched and you don't sleep much and your life is different. And so it's beautiful and it's ugly and the two collide. So that's very much true for social media, because here's a space where you can have your experiences and your thoughts normalized. You can find like-minded people. There's wonderful information. It's a source of entertainment. I get so many chuckles now. I'm a meme fiend, right? Dark sense of humor too. I can feed all of that through social media. And I love that. But also it is a space where if you're not careful, there's a lot of comparison that can come in. It can take a toll on our self-esteem. There's a lot of bad information, meaning incorrect information on social media. It's a space where we can vent our opinions, which is great. Your opinion should be heard, but opinions are the lowest form of critical thinking.
Yeah.
And so we can spout off opinions without taking into account how someone is going to hear them. You know, we can create a small world rather than opening up our world on social media. We can just create a little world where we only listen and converse with people that are like us. And that can be dangerous if you're not in a good place or your thinking is just needing some tweaking.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And also, too, it's just addictive. So it can become a vortex.
Yeah. I love what you said, that nothing is ever good or bad. There really is our story that we're bringing into it, our filters that we're bringing to it, our behaviors that we're bringing into it. But there are, if we choose so, there are some really healthy things. Like you said, the support groups are wonderful, and things like that. So how would you, I'm trying to phrase this question.
I tell my clients you can throw anything out, and then if you want to take it back and reword it, you can. No, I'm just kidding. The first time.
I like that. How do you incorporate in a healthy way faith with your mental health? Because it can very easily become manipulative. It can very easily become avoidance. So how can we allow those merged in a healthy way?
Oh, I have so many thoughts. This could be a seminar, Eric, and if you want, I'll come back and I'll host it. But what do I want to start with here? Our faith should complement our mental health. If you look at the Bible, there are a lot of rules and guidelines to help us structure our living. But the overwhelming message of the gospel is life, is peace, is support, and is hope. And if our faith and our interpretation of the Bible or the believers that we're surrounding ourselves with lean heavier towards the sides of judgmental, or even verses are used abusively, we have to be really careful of that. What was the last thing that you said in your question? Because I'm finding that my mind is trying to recall what it was.
How do we do so healthy in a way that isn't manipulative or using it as an avoidance?
It was the avoidance piece. Yes, I love it. Thank you. Yeah, so often when we experience that stress or pain, we can use our faith walk to avoid addressing what's going wrong. We could have lost a loved one. We could be struggling with infertility. We could find out that our partner just had an affair. We could go through something that is incredibly stressful and painful, and rather than lean into it and weep and grieve and mourn and figure out how to adapt to the news and lean on God to help support us through this pain, we can say, oh, it's all good. God's just going to carry me through it. Or you'll hear people that will say, life's hard, but God's good. And they don't want to talk about how life is hard, or they want to cling to their faith as a way to not address their pain. And so they want to lean heavy into the hope and the joy and the peace, and that's great. But it's not coming from a place that's honest. It's protective. And so if we can just say, hey, I'm trusting God, or I have faith, then you don't have permission to challenge me and say, yeah, but doesn't that hurt? Oh no, God's got me. Oh, okay. Honestly, sometimes Christians are the hardest people to work with in my practice. If their faith is so thick, it's like I can't touch it. Because they'll follow everything up with the Bible verse, or a God is good, or they'll talk about horrific experiences with a big smile on their face, and God's going to use it all. Like that can be true. And also, you've got to feel this. You're never going to move on. And so that is the one thing that we can use our faith to do, is we can lean into the Lord's comfort. And that's the Holy Spirit is there to be our comforter, who can walk with us through the trial. And sometimes we think that if we're a believer, that should somehow mean that our life is not going to be hard, or we're somehow going to get to bypass pain and suffering. And there is no ticket for that.
No.
Life is so hard. Jesus even said that.
Yeah.
You're going to go through a lot of struggle, trials, and tribulation. And so I don't know why we imagine that faith means somehow we'll get to skip over that. We don't get to.
No.
We don't get to.
I think that's sometimes what we forget. You know, we look at these great giants of the faith like Paul and Peter, and they're talking about, I can do all things in Christ who gives me strength. But we forget he's saying that on his deathbed. Like he's about to be walked out to be executed.
Yeah, and his body's chucked into an unmarked grave.
Yeah, like
it didn't turn out so well.
Right? Jeremiah 29:11 was not for him, I guess. The author of half the New Testament. So, but being able to understand that when we aren't honest with our faith, not only are we being dishonest with whoever we're communicating, but we're being dishonest with ourselves and with God. God can't heal what we don't allow him to touch. And he is the good in the equation. And if we try to just, hashtag blessed life and this feelings of, like you said, God's got it, everything's good, is you don't allow yourself to be an authentic, vulnerable relationship. And when you can't be in relationship, you can't heal.
This is, why aren't you could just sit here. No. I'll interview you, Eric. But it is so true. And I think if believers could settle into and is a great conjunction. We always think that when we feel and when we experience things that there has to be an or. Again, coming back to that good or bad. Yeah. Either God's there or he's not. Yeah. I have faith or I don't. I like this or I don't. And it's not so much about the or. Do you know how anxiety producing the or is?
Yep.
That there's only one way to feel about something. That is just not how we are. We're far more complex than that. And if believers could settle into realizing there's an and going on here, I can have faith in God and beg him and get frustrated with him and say, what on earth is going on? That I can have rest and comfort in God while also struggling and being scared. And that if I'm scared or I'm anxious, it doesn't mean that I don't trust God or that's somehow a judgment on my faith walk. Yeah. That there's space for both.
Wow. That's standing ovation right there. And if you're watching right now, rewind it and just listen to that again. Because I struggle with anxiety and depression. And that or, like you said, is paralyzing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's paralyzing. Yeah.
And for us to even get that simple truth that and is huge, that you can be faithful and follow God and struggle. Because like you said, we weren't promised these things would be taken away. We're actually promised that they will continue on this earth. And it stinks and it's terrible. But that's why we have hope that it continues. That doesn't continue, that we have a hope to look forward to, where there is no more pain, no more suffering. But until then, we shouldn't stay.
And here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Is there we have like 3 minutes left. Is there anything that you think, man, if people can walk away with this would be a beginning, a good start? And this was why I keep emphasizing start, because I know with emotional health, I don't want anyone to ever feel like they've missed the boat. At any age, any time, any season of their life, could be the opportunity for them to begin pursuing their emotional health. What will be that first step for people?
I think even just listening to conversations like this is great because it challenges old ways of thinking. And that's part of the beauty of social media too. Yeah. If you follow a few mental health accounts, they'll just drop a few one-liners or little nuggets of education that allow your thinking to be challenged. Yeah. Right? And so that's beautiful. Yeah. And our thinking is super valuable. However, the emotional component is important too, because for our brain to be rewired, our emotions have to be intact and they have to be present for it actually to take root, right? So I think if someone could get themselves to therapy, great. If they can't, to do some journaling or to find a book that's intentional and maybe buddy up with somebody and say, hey, let's read this together. And we're going to actually go to the discussion questions in the back and talk about it together. Yeah.
When you hear, sorry, this is just a question that kind of came up as you were talking in my mind. When you hear people say, don't let your emotions control you, or your emotions lie to you, is there truth to that?
Well, that's not a yes or no, because our emotions are data. If people could just think of their emotions as feedback or data, then their feelings can really help direct them.
Yep.
So our feelings are so valuable. And if we could just look at them neutrally, okay, being jealous, that tells us, hey, we're insecure about something. What is it? Oh, you're angry. Oh, you're going through something. There's something more vulnerable underneath. Feelings are just data. That being said, our feelings are tied to our implicit experiences. Our feelings can just pop up without us being able to control them. And our feelings can tell us that we're in danger when we're actually safe. And so our feelings, because if they start to sense that we're going to experience old pain, it's like, hurry, turn on the defenses, when it actually could be a safe person or a safe place. So yes and no. That's a cliffhanger. You said I had 3 minutes, so I can't.
I know.
Which just probably means like 10 seconds left. So I'm trying to slip it in here real fast. Yeah.
That's why I wanted to ask the question, though, because I want people to know that their emotions are not something that is an enemy. We need to pay attention to them. So whether you're male or female, be aware of our emotions. And like you said, they're data. Let's start paying attention.
Which I just have to add, it's a lot easier said than done, because if we've gone through a lot of trauma and the only way that we can survive is by turning off the feelings, it is really hard to just say, hey, I want those feelings back. And so I think for some of your listeners, when they hear, oh, pay attention to your feelings, they're literally going to sit there saying, okay, I guess, sure. What does that mean? Or I don't know how to do that.
That's good.
And they need help with that. And that's okay. If that's you, that's normal and common, but not healthy. We don't want that.
That's good. And that's why, as we kind of finish our conversation here, I want to invite you, if you're processing through this thing, so you're ready or past ready, or you're willing to start diving into this conversation more, I would highly encourage you to reach out to a counselor. If you don't have access to one, you can email us here at The Well. We're going to be in the process of connecting with Emmaus Road Counseling Center, and even having a counseling center here on our campus. And especially if you need something affordable, we want to do things to help you get the help that you need. Not, again, no shame, no guilt, but just we want to see you healthy. We're called to live in freedom. And sometimes that takes work. And sometimes it takes processing.
It always takes work.
Thank you. No, it's absolutely right. It always takes work. And I love this conversation because you've been able to take my questions further than they needed to be. Further than they took them to where they need to be. And that shows, too, as I'm in process. And that's why I appreciate having someone who has studied this, they're a professional in this, and not perfect, but able to.
Yes, I am. No, I'm not.
I forgot that was in the description. You
yes.
are
That's in my bio. Perfect.
I've reached perfection. But to be able to have these conversations, and
I have a therapist too,
which is great. Yeah, and these are huge, and I just so thankful for this. I know 30 minutes isn't enough time. Hopefully this is just enough to give you an appetizer. But pursue it in either way. If you need help, reach out to us. We'll put her Instagram in there. Yeah, please.
I'd be happy to give you some book suggestions if you'd like. So I'll shoot you an email and send you some book recommendations if that just feels more accessible for people too.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Emily. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
So thank you all for watching and being part of this. Again, leave your comments, questions, all of those. We want to engage with you in that way. This is actually our last episode of this season. We'll be back in a few months with some new guests, new topics. So we want to hear from you. If there's anything that you want to hear, we want to respond to you in that way. We want to have real stories, real people that are engaging with things that you are walking through and how Jesus intersects with those things. So you are loved, and I can't wait to spend time with you again. Have a great one.